you for joining us tonight
Thank you.
For the Civic Leadership Academy with the Department of Public Works and the Department of Parks and Recreation. I know we were off last week, so I hope everybody had a good little break there. Everyone is safe and well. So I'm gonna just kick it off really quickly by introducing the Department of Public Works team who has joined us tonight. We have a pretty big crew, which is really exciting. Some really great people from the department joining us. So we have Chris Hornstein, who's the acting director, Marcel Newman, the assistant director of Public Works, and we also have Sean Weigel, Bill Crean, and Richard DiCarlo. So thank you, Public Works, for joining us. Oh my gosh, Tom. And of course, we have Tom Paulin, Superintendent of Parks for the city of Pittsburgh, one of my favorite people in the world. And he's also got a great park-esque background going on today. So thank you all for joining us so much. And I'm going to kick it over to Chris Hornstein to get us started.
Thanks, Leah. I'm going to share my screen. So this is, so thanks everybody for, taking time out of your personal life and showing some interest in the city and in the Department of Public Works. We appreciate, people taking time out to learn more about the city and how it functions. I think it just helps us all be better, have a nicer city, and provide, continuing services for citizens. For those of you that may not be familiar, the mission of the Department of Public Works is it's about two things. It's really about maintaining infrastructure of all different kinds. This includes streets, parks, buildings, as well as providing the garbage pickup and recycling services. Also, Public Works also has a public safety responsibility. So we do respond to weather-related emergencies like flooding, the land subsidence, snow and ice, other disasters, and supporting our public safety partners in those endeavors as well. The Department of Public Works is essentially broken down into what we call 4 bureaus. Those bureaus are administration. So the Administration Bureau will handle our fiscal finances. They will be the ones that issue permits. You get permits for ball fields, you get permits for shelters, picnic shelters, what have you. They also manage, our forestry division, and also handle the city's warehouse. So the warehouse is where the city receives its ordered goods and services for a variety of different things, whether it be parts for reply, whether it be, essentially cleaning materials for city facilities. They kind of handle that logistical aspect. There's the Bureau of Operations, which is broken down into 2 kind of components, one being the Streets Division, and the other being the Parks Division. The Bureau of Operations focuses mainly on that kind of day-to-day maintenance of city land, whether it be in the street or in the park. We also have the Bureau of Facilities. This is where we house kind of what we call our skilled tradesmen, as well as architects, landscape architects, engineers. This division maintains buildings, as well as provides construction services, and also manages the Department of Public Works' capital budget. Lastly, we have, not leastly, in any stretch of the imagination, we have the Bureau of Environmental Services. And this handles the solid waste pickup and our recycling efforts citywide. Most people don't really know that, we have a tremendous amount of infrastructure in the city. We have 2,000 litter receptacles. We have 3,600 acres of parkland that we maintain for resident usage. We have 33,000 street trees, a large variety of pieces of equipment, 260 buildings, roughly 3 million square feet that we have to maintain. And then also we have, the solid waste removal and recycling at all city residences, and as well as the city of Wilkinsburg, which we provide support to. The Department of Public Works has a significant execution responsibility when it comes to the city's capital budget. So as you can see from this graph, obviously the Department of Mobility of Infrastructure, who has the construction responsibility for streets, bridges, city steps. This isn't typical, but they would have the largest portion of that pie, but we're the next largest portion of that pie. So this covers all manner of work of building renovations, as well as some of the park renovations that you'll see later on. From an operational standpoint, what we do for our kind of day-to-day funds, we have a variety of fund sources at our disposal. This encapsulates all of this. It's fairly evenly broken out between the 3 operational bureaus, and we have supported by a variety of trust funds that help us maintain all the city infrastructure that we're responsible for. You can see here the city standard CAN. So recently we've had this, not recently, but within the last couple of years, we've had a pilot program. We used to spend a significant amount of resources simply emptying the 2,000 litter receptacles throughout the city. And so we enabled a litter censoring pilot several years ago, which has been highly successful. And this allows us to, you can see in this map here, it shows us the location of every city receptacle, but also how that receptacle approaches being full. This allows us to, instead of sending people out every day to check the receptacles, we're able to target our labor staff to just those receptacles that are approaching being full. Now, we haven't lit a receptacle at every city street yet, but we are getting closer, and it has had a dramatic impact on our ability to service those receptacles. And as you can see here, just some data on this, some further data, like at any given time, only 5 or 10% of the litter cans are. So, sending out staff from every division daily to kind of pick the garbage, so to speak, for these receptacles was very time consuming. And in a lot of cases wasn't really necessary. So what the technology's allowed us to do is really target that collection in the evening, out of traffic, a little bit safer for our people. Kind of happens at night, a little bit less disturbance for residents. And then, that frees up those labor resources to do much more tasks, fixing potholes, responding to park maintenance events, those types of things. Another piece of technology that we're in process of implementing is the city snowplow tracker. Hasn't been activated recently, but it gives us the capability to show everyone where our trucks are being actively plowing or spreading salt. And so this gives us a really great capability of seeing where active coverage is. Residents are able to, when it's activated on the proper snow events, they'll be able to see when their street has been treated or when it's going to be treated, where it is in the queue. And so this also actually helps us better manage our resources too. On the back end, it tells us how much salt we're spreading on streets. It tells us, how active the trucks have been regards to their routes. And so if we're having issues with truck maintenance, truck breaks down, we're able to deploy those resources kind of faster, better, to keep those vehicles out on the street servicing neighborhoods. I'm going to ask Marcel, she'd jump on to talk about the Bureau of Administration.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. Our Bureau of Administration is really responsible for the personnel and the budget for the Department of Public Works, the permits for shelters and the sports facilities, and for the forestry division. Next slide, Chris. So budget. My team helps with the budget recommendations, both with the operating and a little bit of capital. We also work with Office of Management on budget, on setting up new contracts. We will also work with personnel. Our Human Resources Department helps us with the hiring and training and employee development for all new recruits. We have shelters, picnic shelters for summertime. This season the plan is to open them up in early May, hopefully with we won't have many COVID restrictions, but obviously we will follow state protocols if there are any restrictions. But the plan is to open up the shelters hopefully sometime in May, and the sports field as well. We are still taking applications. So if you'd like to schedule, there's I'll give you a website at the end of the presentation on where to find all this information. We also work on other public works programs such as memorial benches and gardens in parks. Next slide. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited about spring planting. We have 52 days until spring. The City of Pittsburgh Public Works Department has currently 6 community gardens and parks. We've got some in Heth Playground up in Morningside neighborhood, one within Highland Park, and one near Kilpatrick Street, MLK in the Hill District. There's another one in Bandyshawn, and one in Beachview, and one at the Ream Rec Center. There are several other community gardens throughout the city, and some of them are on vacant lands, but Public Works will only handle the ones that are in parks. Our colleagues in city planning can also work with you if you have a vacant lot or a side yard that you'd like to plant in. Next one. So we also work with community organizations, community leaders on volunteer programs. Spring is coming, and many communities will be eager to get out and start helping their neighbors, cleaning up parks, picking up litter, organizing volunteer events. We have a program for that in Public Works, whereby if you send us an application, it's really easy. It takes 2 minutes to fill out online. We will provide trash bags, pick up those grabbers and gloves, and then we will help you organize the event. So anytime you're interested, there is a program for that on Public Works site. Next slide. So within Public Works site, there is a reservation system called Rec Pro. That is a system we use to book shelters online. We have about 35 shelters, 4 year-round shelters, and several outdoor shelters, picnic shelters. They range anywhere from $150 to $350. They come with, if you get a permit, it does come with an alcohol license. So those can be found on registerparks.pittsburghpa.gov. Next slide. Our forestry division, as Chris mentioned, there are several, well, 33,000 street trees to be exact. They're all mapped in cartograph, and there's a big inventory of them, which we update every year. We also maintain all the trails, riverfronts, greenways, public facilities, right-of-ways, and park trees. The next slide. Our forestry division does respond to emergency storms. We also do tree plantings, routine prunings. The one thing we've implemented new this year is permits for plantings and removals. That's something that can be obtained through our forestry division. Next slide. Okay, I'll hand it off to Tom Pollan now to talk about, to Bill Green for operations.
Okay. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. And thanks for showing an interest in the city and essentially finding out how some of the sausage is made here on our end. I am Bill Crean. I'm the superintendent of street operations. I oversee street maintenance, pothole patching, street repair, not resurfacing though, street cleaning program, the litter can sensor program that Chris talked about, snow and ice control, obviously, and street sweeping, I said that, and litter control, and clean and leans, homeless camps, and special events. I'll talk a little bit about that. Now, the street sweeping program obviously was suspended because of the virus. No one had anywhere to put their car. No one was going to work. So we did keep the schedule, but there was no enforcement, and we'll probably have to do that again, depending on the results of the virus. So that said, litter cans, Chris already talked about that. The censored litter cans, over 1,000 out there, and the new litter can operations overnight. Only servicing cans that are 80% full, and having a GPS routing system, so they only go directly to those cans that are 80% full. That's the threshold we have set. And you'll find a can without a lid that doesn't have a sensor. That's where the sensor is. You know, that may be overflowing. It's only because it's not on the sensor grid, and then we kind of maintain them by division. And there are 5 maintenance divisions. The Clean and Lean program, we have implemented a special clean and lean team. They service unsightly properties, working with PLI, permits, licenses, and inspections. We tidy up some unsightly properties, and the property owner is billed through our cartograph system. We keep track and do a cost recovery, and we lien that property. So if there is a transaction, hopefully we'll get some of that money back. The homeless camps, we work closely with the mayor's office and Mercy Outreach to clean up some of the homeless camps in the city. A lot of these folks are just on hard times now more than ever. And so we provide them with bags and a wherewithal to get rid of their trash. And we come and service them sort of weekly. And if we need heavier equipment, we get in there and clean it up. A lot of them accumulate a lot of stuff. I'm sure you've seen it. There are a few that are visible, and a lot of them are not visible. But we work closely with the mayor's office and understanding that these folks are having a hard time of it. And the special events committee I sit on, various city agencies from public safety, fire, EMS, police, obviously, Parks and Rec is there. So all these events that impact different facilities in the city, and that has taken a turn down because of the COVID, obviously. There are no mass gatherings, the parades have been canceled. And so working with public safety and the COVID guidelines, people are still applying. The Shady Side Arts Festival has applied. Obviously, things will change with the vendor booths and spacing, and so we'll see what happens in the summertime when that takes place. And obviously, the public safety plays a big part in the special events with the way of the world, and so we work hand in hand with public safety, assuring crowd safety, whether it's crowd fencing, water barriers, or trucks that are blocking the festival area. That's about it on my end. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Next, Tom Pollan is going to talk about parks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. As you can see, we're a big operation, Public Works as a whole. There's a total of almost 650 employees in Public Works, and as you looked at that, the different bureaus and whatnot, it's a big team. We are intertwined with each other, and we all have our separate responsibilities. But when I can say that one thing that's great is when somebody needs something, we step up and help each other. So it's great to be part of a team like us. Just a little bit about myself. I started with the city back in 1987 with building inspection. Started then moved into Parks and Recreation in 1989, and then in 1993 we merged City Parks Maintenance merged with Public Works. And then in 2014, I became superintendent, currently oversee 144 employees, 6 park divisions, and heavy equipment. We have 160 parks, but there are 167 separate facilities. Emerald View Park is not a continuous park, so it's listed. I have it listed as a separate facilities. So of those 167 separate facilities, we have 97 employees, laborers and tractor operators to maintain those, with 10 managers and foremen. And some of the functions that these guys do, that these employees do, of course, landscape maintenance, custodial activities, dragging infields and general maintenance of the fields, picking litter and emptying trash, leaf collection, playground maintenance, snow removal. Snow removal on the park side, we take care of the sidewalks and the parking lots. Maintaining of benches, bleachers, tables, trails, trimming trees if we can reach it from the ground. The park divisions take care of the trees, and then forestry assists us with anything that we can't reach from the ground. And of course, we have our storm damage cleanup. And of course, we have special events. There's a lot of special events in the parks as well. And just something new that we started last year with the COVID, we didn't have the ability to clean facilities as much as we would have liked. We used to use the graffiti truck to come and do cleanup for us. We actually have now temporary 300-gallon water tanks that we can take pressure washer to the facilities, and we're currently sanitizing the playgrounds at least once a week. So some of the activities and assets within the parks, Marcel had mentioned about the shelters. We actually added more rentable shelters for 2021, and including gazebos. So there's actually 46 rentable shelters and gazebos. They're going to be available starting on May 1st and be available through October 10th. Again, COVID permissions, whatever, following the state guidelines. We have 413 play structures in 121 playgrounds. I just ran that number. It's a pretty amazing number when you think about it. So that's each component, a slide, a whirl, that type of thing. 40 miles of trails and pathways, 218 courts, different types of courts, basketball hoops, pickleball, tennis, volleyball. On the courts, a lot of the courts, we have 28 courts have an activation button. And with that activation button, we are able to keep the lights on year round. So you're actually able to go over, hit the activation button. It'll turn on for an hour. There's an indicator light that'll tell you that, hey, 55 minutes has gone. If you would like another hour, within that 5 minutes, you press the button again and you get another 60 minutes. This way, the lights are not burning all the time as they used to in the past. They used to be on from sunset till 10, 11, 12 at night because it was a manual timer to now, again, if you wanted to play basketball today and go out in the cold, you could actually do it at those courts. We have 109 fields. 91 of them is actually baseball diamonds. And again, we have activation buttons put on those. That's a one-time push of a button. If you have a permit, you'll push the button and then the lights will then come on for you. We have 2 disc golfs, 7 off-leash dog parks, a skating rink, 1 boat launch, a golf course, 3 skate parks, 27 spray features and spray parks, 19 swimming pools. So there's a lot of different activities and features that you can use within the parks. Of those, some of the assets that we maintain, we have almost 1,800 benches that we need to maintain, 252 bleachers, 356 picnic tables, over 1,200 trash cans, and 170 drinking fountains. So that's just a little bit about parks. I also oversee heavy equipment, and heavy equipment maintains, specifies, do the specifications for the landscape equipment all the way up to all the different types of heavy equipment, as well as the plows and spreaders that goes on to the trucks that maintain the streets, and participates in the purchasing of equipment, as well as we do special events out of heavy equipment where we pull a showmobile. We have a showmobile. It's 44 feet long. It's an enclosed stage. And we also have a trans stage, which is a 40-foot long open stage and 35-foot long bleachers that we can haul. We have 6 mechanics who maintain almost 1,600 pieces of equipment. That includes high lifts, backhoes, street sweepers, forestry equipment, and landscape equipment. And again, as well as all the plows and spreaders on the 107 trucks that are available to plow and salt the roads. And then last, we also have 12 heavy equipment operators that will take care of the loading the salt domes, as well as anything that needs to be done that's with using a backhoe, high lift, skid steer, that type of equipment. So that's a little bit about parks and heavy equipment. Off to you, Chris.
Thanks, Tom. I'll talk a little bit about the Bureau of Facilities. So in the Bureau of Facilities, we have construction services, facilities maintenance, and architecture. So as I mentioned earlier, we have, over 2 million square foot of city-owned and operated buildings, in addition to, we manage or help operate the city pools. So we've got roughly 70 staff positions of skilled trade labor. So this is, our cement finishers, our masons, our electricians, our plumbers, our carpenters, our HVAC techs. We interact a lot with the city warehouse because of our roles and responsibilities. And there's, the Bureau, the facilities maintenance and the construction services, we do a lot of what we would call minor and sometimes even what I might consider major construction jobs. So we'll do interior remodeling of buildings. You can see a lot of the concrete work and retaining wall reconstruction that we do throughout the city, whether it's sidewalks. If you look in, some of our deck hockey facilities, we recently added ADA bleachers as a mix of a capital project and in-house work, where our construction folks, built a concrete pad and then assembled those bleachers on site. So you'll see that at Bloomfield deck hockey, you'll see that at Banksville, you'll see that at Brookline deck hockey. They also do site grading, and then we have what we call, minor demo and salvage operation, where we'll take down small structures, things that are no longer safe. And they will also handle, city board ups on behalf of the city. This was recently integrated internal. This is kind of behind the dashboard look. Several years ago, if you worked in a city facility and you had an issue like the toilet was backed up or a light bulb was out, or you noticed a roof leak of some kind, or your air conditioning wasn't working, basically you either had to call someone or you filled out a paper form and you faxed or emailed it to the facilities maintenance folks. Now we created an online portal. Those requests get routed. You can send it, it will go right to a plumber, an HVAC tech, an electrician, what have you. And it'll get scheduled and be responded. We've seen, there's been a tremendous improvement in our ability to respond to emergencies and just regular maintenance. And this has enabled us now, because of it, we're able to actually build in preventative maintenance programs within our HVAC techs. Because instead of them constantly running around responding to the latest crisis, now they're able to get ahead of the game and change filters, kind of extend the longevity of equipment. So we're really excited about this. This has been a great pilot program. We can kind of continue to tweak and improve it. I would ask, it's only available to city staff. So if you are at a public facility and you notice there might be an issue, this is available to any city employee. So if you're at a rec center or a senior center, you might notice a problem or an issue, you can just ask that you reach out to those staff members. If you're at a city park using a restroom, we ask that you maybe reach out to make a 311 or a council request, even if that the case might be, and we'll find a way to get those issues taken care of. The architecture, so we have architects, landscape architects, project managers, and some other technical staff that assist it. So we handle all the soup to nuts of project management from the time it's an idea in the community's mind of what we want to have happen, all the way through construction, final takeover. So we'll handle the design, we'll handle the construction. We will do in-house design in some instances. A lot of instances we must contract those things out. And then we also do the photographic and the archival inventory of the city's asset. And now I'm going to ask Sean Weigel to talk about the Bureau of Environmental Services.
There we go. Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everybody. The Bureau of Environmental Services' primary job is to provide residential trash and recycling collection for our residents. We're also involved in many other programs, such as composting opportunities, special events recycling, the recycling drop-off areas, and more recently, the new household hazardous waste program throughout the city. Next slide, please. All right. The Bureau has approximately 200 employees. Each day we send out 36 refuse routes. We do 34 in the city of Pittsburgh. We also provide trash service for the borough of Wilkinsburg. And then we send out 10 recycling routes every day. As you know, we do half the city 1 week and then the other half the following. Each week we provide service to 115,000 residents. We're the only city department that has regular contact with all our residents. Certainly it's my job. I want to make sure that is a good experience for everybody. We also provide collection to our own facilities, the firehouses, police, medics, city county building, as well as some of the county facilities as well. Next slide. On the solid waste side, we take up to 2 bulky items every week. We do ask residents to limit the size of the trash container to 35 gallons. Anything larger than that certainly presents problems for our folks. We take pretty much everything. There are a few items that we don't take, large amounts of construction demolition waste, when we cannot take Freon containing devices to the landfill. Also covered devices, those are your computers, televisions, things along that line, as well as household hazardous waste. Next slide. The curbside recycling program, we do a single stream mix in the city. Everything right now, you're able to mix everything together in the same recycling bin, or still for now the blue bag. But we are still collecting glass curbside, plastic, metal cans, bottles, jugs, and jars, anything 3 gallon or less. We still take all the clean papers as well as cardboard at the curb. The key to that, it all has to be clean material, no food residue, and we're able to collect all that and get it all recycled and turned into new materials. Next slide, please. We went a little too far. There we go. And the way we're able to do that, the recycling, we work with a vendor in Hazelwood. Everything goes through a very long conveyor system. They have electric currents, magnets, screens. It's quite the complex thing that they're able to sort all these materials out. But really what we get out of it is really truly what goes into it. Right now, about 86% of what we take is actually recyclable material. There's a lot of things residents tend to put in the recycling that unfortunately isn't. So as long as we stick with the guidelines of what we're able to take, more and more material is actually able to be recycled and then processed into new stuff. And next slide. And last but not least, proper set out ensures that we are able to get your materials quickly and efficiently. Certainly, like I said, please rinse all the containers, discard the lids, caps. No food is really the big thing for the recycling side. Place your recycling in blue bags, or preferably recycling containers. We are issuing now containers throughout the city. It's going to be a multi-year project, but we have begun putting those out in the neighborhoods. Certainly, if you have cardboard, which everyone's home now buying stuff online, please break the boxes down, bundle them up together into one box, and set them out. And last but not least, the very simple thing, just separate your trash from your recycling slightly. That way, when the various crews pull up, it's a very easy, quick operation for them. If everything's kind of mixed together and not in the proper containers or bags, there's more likelihood that we're going to miss something or have an issue. So that's what we do. The quick breakdown of what we do in environmental services. Back to you, Chris.
All right, and that's the end of the presentation. Leah, I'm going to keep sharing my screen. That way, if people have questions, they want me to reference it, I can easily go back.
Okay, sounds good. So it looks like we have a few. First of all, I'm sorry. Thank you so much, everyone, for that presentation. That was really helpful and informative. And usually we give, you probably won't be able to see them because we have the screen up, but we're giving clap emoji reactions to thank you for your presentation. Okay, so it looks like we already do have a few questions in the chat. These are mostly for environmental services. So Brandy asked, how do residents get rid of Freon items like TVs, et cetera, that can't afford those programs that dispose for a fee?
Well, as far as the Freon, there are some places around the appliance warehouse on the south side. If you're able to get it to them, they still do take it for free. We do have some various community events throughout the year. We're working on scheduling. There are some different ways to have some vouchers for those programs as well. So certainly the best, check with the city website regularly to get the most updated information on all those collections.
Yeah, and I will note, and I think Sean touched on this, that the city-sponsored household hazardous waste drop-off center that's available year-round is at a subsidized price compared to most of the other private drop-off centers. And then the community and neighborhood drop-off sites, like Sean said, do have financial assistance available during those. So those are great opportunities to get rid of some of those things. And Andrea said, do you take empty paint cans?
Yes, we certainly can, as long as the paint can's empty, or even if the paint's dried out. If it's a water-based paint, if you dry it out, we can certainly take those as trash. If it's an oil-based, or you do not want to go through the process of trying to dry it out, that's when you would need to use one of the household hazardous waste programs.
Perfect. Okay, let's see here. It looks like Matt has his hand up for a question.
I guess I have a bunch of questions, but I'll stick with waste management for now since we're on the list.
Sure.
One, is there any plan to try to initiate like a citywide composting program? And two, as far as recycling, do you have any information on where recycling actually goes? Like if it actually does get recycled? I understand that we collect it, but I'm curious as to like where it is actually processed.
Okay, I'll start with the composting side. So we do have the twice annual curbside pickup that the city offers, and we do have 3 permanent drop-off locations throughout the city. So those are available to our residents year-round. That being said, we're always exploring options. We're just participating in a study for different composting operations. So it is something we're actively looking into and doing. Our Christmas tree program actually just ended yesterday. We don't have the numbers for those. Last year, though, we collected and recycled over 37 tons of Christmas trees. So we were physically chipping and counting today. So we don't have this year's, but we are working to expand those opportunities for residents throughout the city. And now, as far as the recycling goes, yes, we do work with a company. It's a global market. The last couple years, it's been horrible worldwide. That is why it's so very important to have good quality material. Everyone usually has good hopes and intentions, and they think just about everything can be recycled. But that's why we really have to stick to the items that we list. If there's things that are outside of that, that's when it really degrades our material, and the vendors really do have a hard time then packaging and selling that to folks. So again, if we stick with what we have curbside, we're able certainly to get that recycled.
Thanks, Sean. Let's see. Larry, you had a question?
Thank you. The receptacle sensor program sounds great. How do you feel about sensor equipped receptacles that have built-in solar powered compactors? I've heard many cities have had good success with those.
To be honest, I don't know that we've explored that idea. I'll ask Bill if and Marcel if we've.
I'll jump in there, Chris. Yes, working with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, there were probably 8 big belly solar cans, they're called. They have a compactor built in. There's a recycling side to it. These are dual cans. And they do have sensors. Once the compactor reaches some resistance, there's a series of lights on the side, green, yellow, and red. And so the truck can pull up, and there is also a GPS program to go service them. But they were sort of cost prohibitive for us, and there are some around the Civic Arena, the PPG paints, and there are several in town, but it never got any legs with us.
Thank you.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Bill?
Thanks, Leah. My questions are mainly for Tom Paulin.
Yes.
You mentioned, Tom, did you say there's 46 rentable structures, like in the parks and, areas like that? I think that's what you said, 46 of them, right?
That's correct. 46 shelters and gazebos. Yes.
Yeah, I work with Pittsburgh Community Services, Inc. We're the community action agency, but we're like an independent nonprofit. And I asked about like, would there be a way that we could work with you to utilize those to take workshops to neighborhoods? You know, like 1-day workshops. And Henry, who's on our board, said like, you know, there's a way to sign up and you know, but I don't want to rent them and I didn't want to do them individually. But I was wondering if there might be someone I could work with that we might be able to bring things, you know, to neighborhoods, you know, at like West End Park or Banksville Park, things like that, because those are great. You can open up the, you know, the air and meet people safely. Our offices are tiny. And I was just curious about that, if that might be something that's doable.
Marcel, you want to jump in on this one?
Sure. So if you will send me some kind of a proposal, Bill, we would
Okay.
work with you. You know, if it's something that your organization cannot pay for, we can maybe work with the mayor's office on getting some kind of exception.
Okay.
If it's for a nonprofit or for community use and it's
Yeah.
open to everybody, we will certainly work with you. If you'll send me a proposal, we would love to talk to you about it.
Excellent. And one of the in the mix of things, who handles the neighborhood gardens? Is that a city function or is that a neighborhood like community development corporation?
It's usually, so the community gardens, they're the actual vegetable gardens. They're not beautification gardens, by the way.
Yeah.
It's usually a community group that handles it.
Okay.
Yes. So each garden has a community leader that supports the garden. They work on buying supplies or trading tools.
Right.
But they work closely with us. So we don't work with each individual person. We work with the community leader, and they we schedule summertime or what we call monthly cleanup events.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And your email will be posted, Leah, in the usual places, right?
Yeah, and I can just connect I can connect you all as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And then it looks like we actually had one more question in the chat from Dan. This is another one for Sean. Does all cardboard, such as small cereal boxes, need to be separated from the other recyclables, or is it the flattening of the large boxes just to make it easier for collection?
Curbside, it's certainly the larger cardboard, the boxes, things like that. If it's the cereal boxes, things along that line, for the curbside, it does not need to be separated. Now, if you do take your material to the drop-offs, we do ask you that you separate it as the containers are listed. We do have an option on the paper side of products that we can take them differently and get different rates for them. So the cardboard right now is really doing well market-wise. So we're really ramping up taking specific loads of cardboard, things like that. But at the curb, as long as it'll fit in the can or the bag, it's fine to mix everything.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Matt, we can loop back around to you. Oh, you're still muted, sorry.
Sorry. I guess with the recycling, I get that doing everything, just mixing everything together makes it easier for the average person, incentivizing them to recycle. But I also wonder if that leads to extra costs. Like obviously we're paying people to sort all of this recycling and the mechanisms for all that. And I would assume that a lot of that recycling gets contaminated in the process of it being mixed. And I guess I'm wondering what if we're going to stick with this single stream, or is there any talk of like going back to separating? I mean, you're just saying that cardboard itself is getting a better price individually. And I guess if we could collect it individually, like maybe the financial aspects of that work better. Is there any investigation into that, I guess?
Well, industry-wide, the shift really went to single stream years ago. We'd actually started that back when I was the city's recycling supervisor. So it's industry-wide where we've really seen that changed. Again, a lot of the MRFs that take the material, they are really set up to be able to handle it, to separate it. The real key is that, again, it's only the materials that are supposed to go in. When folks throw in extension cords, videotapes, things like that, it tangles up the machines. The blue bags, quite honestly, are not good for the machines. That's why we're working to get the containers out to everybody. But again, as long as folks stick with the key materials, the facilities are there set up. They have the technology to get everything separated.
Thanks. And Sean, I'm not sure if you went too much into it. I'm sorry, I can't recall if you already did. But did you want to talk a little bit about the blue bin rollout?
Yes, we've started with the city and the mayor's office a multi-year distribution. We're going to be putting 35-gallon recycling cans to each resident. We got started in the fall with that. We've finished actually today with another portion of that. Today we've got about 5,000 of those out. So it's going to be ramping up this spring. We're going to be finishing up our central division this coming year and moving on citywide with that. Certainly more information on the city website about that. If you simply search blue bins on the city main page, you can get lots of information on that.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a really cool program. Kelsey?
Hi. First, just thank you. I'm very impressed by the turnout of DPW staff tonight, so thank you. I just had a question I have two questions actually, one about water fountains and the other about porta potties. So maybe a theme going on, but I was just wondering if you have an idea of whether you'll be turning water fountains back on. I know they were pretty much turned off for the last year, but now that we have a little bit more information about how COVID spreads, do you have any plans to turn them back on this year? And then the other question was about, in a similar vein, about porta potties. So several of the porta potties were removed from trails last year, but they weren't removed from parks. And so I just was hoping for a little bit more information about why some porta potties were removed while others remained, and if we can expect to see them back along our trails in 2021.
Thanks, Kelsey. Tom, you want to jump in on the porta potty issue?
So, well, I can't speak to the ones that are on the trail, Chris. We did increase the porta johns within the parks because we did close some of the permanent bathrooms. I'm not sure, Bill, I'm going to leave this to you. I'm not sure. Do you get the porta johns for the trails, or is that? I apologize, I don't know.
As soon as I can get my fingers to work.
Here you go.
The Friends of the Riverfront, I believe, placed them at the trailhead in Greenfield. And I can't think of where the other one is. Is it underneath the 6th Street Bridge?
Well, the ones I was talking about, yeah, are the Eliza Furnace Trailhead and the West Hall Street. I'm actually the executive director of Friends of the Riverfront, but they're not ours.
Oh, you don't place them. Oh, I'm sorry. We haven't had the pleasure. I've never ordered them. There was a handicap at the Greenfield Eliza Furnace. There was a handicap and a regular place there. I use that trail. And then West Hall Street by the Big Hat, by the prison, right?
Yeah.
There was one there. No,
two out there, but
there as well. Okay, I have never ordered them personally or directly. So they're not there now.
No, and we have a lot of complaints from trail users about lack of restrooms and complaints of seeing people use restrooms in other ways that are not
a restroom.
But I can follow up with you afterwards.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we definitely, somehow that detail got missed somewhere in the city. We'll have to reach out to folks internally, and also we'll do that too. Regarding the water fountains, I'm cautiously optimistic. We review all the CDC guidance on that. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to turn on water fountains again this year. We are still kind of monitoring our state guidance and everything else, but I'd like to say tentatively the plan is yes, we will turn on the water fountains unless the COVID situation reverts back to some hopefully unforeseeable situation that I don't want to contemplate.
So I guess the playgrounds were closed for a while because of that, and they were reopened, and I'm hearing they're sanitized. So are there studies or evidence that the fountains get higher usage than the playgrounds, or because of like the nature of people's mouths being close to them?
It's the nature of the transmission and the mouths being closer to it. That really is the concern on our end. And so we review those protocols with our UPMC advisors as well as our EMS personnel that give us updated guidance. So that initially that was the guidance that led us to close not just the water fountains, but a lot of the permanent city or some of the city parks restrooms, and go to Porta Johns because it was just a concern over cleanliness. So I think with the updated guidance, we should be okay. I do have regular meetings with that staff, and that is our concern. It really is. It's a point of transmission, not unlike sharing a meal in a restaurant.
Thank you.
Thanks. Larry?
Thanks. I have a quick facilities question. I was in a meeting today with maybe 50 people that have eyes on the tow pound site. And I know you can't commit, but as things stand today, when approximately do you anticipate vacating?
The tow pound site, you mean the place down in the strip district?
Yep.
I really, so far out, several years from now, beyond that, I really can't. Anything else would just be purely wild speculation.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Bill, you had another question?
Actually, it was more of just a comment, but I wanted to say kudos to the city garbage trucks. I live like over by Crafton, so I'm always in the Green Tree Borough, Mount Lebanon, Ingram, and I do side home improvement stuff, and people are amazed. Like in the city, you can just put anything on, like you said, any week, like mattresses, couches, but in boroughs, no one can do that. And I just wanted to say I love the city garbage. It's really worked out great. You just put it on, it's gone. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and we know that our environmental services staff has been working extra hard throughout the pandemic. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but that there's just been so much more waste coming from people's homes that the Department of Public Works and our environmental services staff has been picking up for us throughout this time. And so, yeah, I think they definitely deserve some extra kudos at the moment.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Matt?
So I don't even know if anyone's gonna be able to answer this question, but I guess I already knew that Public Works was a very large institution, but this is really just kind of blowing my mind as to how large you guys actually are. I'm really surprised to see that your budget is so much smaller than DOMI, because DOMI is building new infrastructure, but we have far more old infrastructure to maintain. And it seems like we have a massive legacy and a massive backlog. And all I hear is people pissed off because the vacant lot down the street from their house isn't getting cut, and they don't like the idea of the lean and clean, or the clean and lean, because they can't get city-owned property cleaned. And it seems like there's just a massive need for public works in general. So I guess I'm just wondering if you guys have any insight as to why new infrastructure is being prioritized over just the maintenance of the things that we already have. It seems like that requires just as much, if not more, funding, just because of how large public works is.
Yeah, I've got some insights into that, so I can take that question. So I think first, when you look at that capital budget, right, that is what we would call a different pot of money than our operating budget. So our operating budget really is like the laborers, the day-to-day, and our operating budget in the Department of Public Works is much larger than DOMI's operating budget. So if you think of DOMI as really focused on the long-term planning. The other part of DOMI's capital project that sometimes is lost in that graph is streets repaving. That's considered a capital item. That's regular maintenance. That's what I consider as a design professional, as a regular maintenance. That these streets need repaved, and they invest a lot of money in that. And I believe in recent years we've invested more money in repaving streets than we have in prior years. And I also add that doing a better quality job of it as well, since I interface with some of those engineers on occasion. Some past practices were like, didn't really have, I think, a return on the investment for the citizen that you would want to see. And so a lot of that budget breakdown that you see is a commitment towards that. Also, DOMI is the recipient of a lot of state and federal grants as it relates to infrastructure. So, in order to receive those grants, the city must contribute capital dollars of its own. And we receive a significant amount because we are the city of bridges. And so, but the city has to be the one in the purview to kind of initiate that. So that's why you see such a kind of a large capital investment. It really is necessary. We're in terms of a city, we call what I call like an older city. And so what that means is smaller blocks, more streets to pave, more connections that have to be maintained. So with that comes, a greater demand for streets, for street related infrastructure.
Can I throw a follow-up in there real quick?
Sure.
Is it ever been explained? I guess I don't understand why one department is paving streets when they're not necessarily building a new street. And like you're saying, you would consider repaving an existing street to be maintenance. But Department of Public Works is patching potholes and they're in charge of maintenance. But repaving an existing street also seems like maintenance. I guess I'm confused as to why they're under separate departments to begin with.
They didn't used to be. The logic, as I can understand it, is this is a relatively new concept. So the idea being that, because street infrastructure requires a lot of planning, a lot of engineering. Not that facilities doesn't, not that constructing a park or replacing a playground doesn't require the same level. But because of the influx of federal dollars and state dollars into that, you really need to have a large focus on planning and engineering. You have a lot of partners in the street right of way. You have utilities, you have, adjacent property owners, you have public transit that has to be considered. And so the mentality of it, and Bill, jump in here too, because we do share our kind of pothole data with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. So, we do share that. They share their paving schedule with us. We try to coordinate those activities. We used to all be one big department, or, over the years that has changed. But I think the thinking now is that, some of those ancillary benefits that come with focusing on, reducing the usage of personal vehicles, emphasizing alternative modes of transportation, housing all of that in one department, coordinated with, how you maintain that asset long-term, with the amount of long-term planning is why that is kind of its own separate entity, if you will.
Right, Chris, street resurfacing used to be in Public Works and it was cleaved out and given to mobility infrastructure. But using our data from the dashboard and the 311 service requests we get for potholes, we then give that information to mobility and infrastructure that, we visited this alley this many times, but we got this many 311s here. We're wasting time. We're wasting our time here. Now's the time to resurface this. So yeah, the cold patch of nightmares that we experience over the winter, we pass on to mobility, and hopefully they get addressed.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a big department split. DOMI is, I believe, the newest department in the city of Pittsburgh. So I think that there's kind of like there was a big transition, and there continues to be sort of like a leveling out of those roles and responsibilities citywide. Kelsey, is your hand raised for a different question?
No, sorry, I just forgot to.
That's okay. Okay. I don't see any more hands or questions. Oh, Matt. Go ahead. No problem. We have time.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I guess I don't know who this is directed at, but we have been combative, I guess, with the Public Works transfer station in Riverview Park, in the lower end of the park. It's my understanding that there are being plans made to move that transfer station down by the 31st Street Bridge. And I guess I'm curious as to what the status of that is.
Yeah, I can answer some of that. Right now, yes, there are plans to relocate that transfer station. The 31st Street site is one of those things being considered. Right now we're in the process of constructing a new, we're going through the design process and to quickly construct a new 4th division over near McKinley Park, sort of the Knoxville area of the city. You're familiar with that in the South Hills. And really we need to get that. This is the first time we've constructed a new Public Works divisional building. Based on the age and condition bill, it's been quite some time. And we have a different operating model than when the last one was built. So we need to get in there and test that. So my expectation is that that transition is likely to happen. Relocating the one in Riverview Park, I would say, within the next 2 or 3 years.
So I guess the issue we have with the one in Riverview Park is, for me personally, I guess, is less so that it's there, but it also seems to be the systems that are being used. Like the trash is being brought there on Friday, dumped on the ground, and left there until Monday. And none of the fences are being maintained. So the system, like the site is not secure. I mean, I've been there so many times where people show up and just dump shit out of their car, throw stuff on the ground. Walking into the park, the trash is just blowing out of the transfer station into the park. Public Works says that that's then the park's maintenance issue because it's in the park. Parks maintenance says it's the Public Works because it's their trash. And I guess I'm happy that it's leaving the park because it's in a park, but I also don't want to see that same situation happening by the 31st Bridge with trash blowing into the river. So I guess I'm wondering if we're also looking at like new systems other than what's currently happening.
Oh, no, we are. That's part of the whole 4th division design. So, I mean, we've got a lot of, unfortunately, we've got a lot of limitations with that Riverview Park location, one of those being technology. We work with our Department of IMP to try to get security cameras in that location. It's extremely difficult. Doesn't affect Wi-Fi. We have really poor connectivity there. We're working with them actively to try to resolve that problem. Some of your other questions were on the fencing, everything else. I think those are all things that we can consider in the short term too. So feel free to reach out and see if we can have a conversation around that. We certainly want our sites to be, any of our public work sites to be, just clean. We want to be good neighbors. We don't want to be a nuisance to surrounding residents. We want to be, as quiet and as respectful as possible, within the confines of what our job entails. I think here, I think there's probably some other assistance that we can ask for citywide to help manage the situation.
And I was going to say, I understand the lack of investment in maintenance in a space that you're going to be vacating and probably demoing, because it doesn't make sense to use. I don't necessarily have a problem with the fence isn't intact, because I don't really want the city to spend thousands of dollars to rebuild a fence that they're going to tear down in 2 years. That doesn't really seem to make sense to me either. And on top of all that, everyone really likes to complain about public works, but I mean, the scope of your guys' work is pretty extraordinary. And I don't really feel like most people have a firm understanding of that at all.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll certainly up our game there to keep that fence line clean and put that stuff into the roll-off boxes as it comes in. There was a compactor there at one time, and it crapped out and was removed and never replaced. So it would get dumped directly into a hopper and compacted, but and that was never replaced. So we have the situation we have now.
And what happens with that is the divisions and people will drop it off on the weekends. We don't have an operator there to load the boxes, which then unfortunately sometimes if the garbage is opened up and loose material, it does blow away. If you haven't been there recently, Matt, you'll notice that the site has changed dramatically. We realize that there is an issue, and we are addressing what we can, again, without a capital investment, trying to make it look a little better. We took down some fences. PWSA used to store material there. We took that out. And so some of the gravel area from the dump site up is all going to be turned into a turf green area.
Cool.
Just grass, so we're slowly trying to get to it. And of course, we've been hit with COVID as well with our employees. It's sometimes our employees, our divisions have been down to only 50% of our personnel due to transfers, vacations, COVID, everything else. So, we're supporting each other as best we can. We have, Bill and I both have laborers over to help Sean out on environmental service side. So, we're getting to things as fast as we can. And again, we did notice that there was an issue over there, and if you haven't been over there for recently, take a look again. We are addressing it.
Great.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, well, I think, just make sure, I think that is it on questions for the Department of Public Works. So let's give one more clap emoji. There we go. Some people were already on the same page as me. Thank you, everyone from DPW for joining us tonight, taking the time to give that presentation and answer questions candidly and honestly and thoroughly. That was really interesting and helpful. Let's see, it looks like it's 7:20 right now. So let's take a 5-minute break and come back at 7:25 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Thanks, DPW.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Have a
everybody.
good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, so I think that we can go ahead and get started with the Department of Parks and Recreation. So tonight we are joined by the Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation, Ross Chapman. We're also joined by Catherine Vargas, who is the Assistant Director of Community Recreation, Youth and Families. And then finally, we're joined by Lou Ann Horon, who is the Assistant Director of Senior Programming. So thank you so much to the three of you for joining us this evening. And I'm going to kick it over to Director Chapman to start off.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Ross. Before I launch into the slide presentation, which is not nearly as picturesque as Public Works, they always have these really great images. I just wanted to thank you all for participating in the Academy. I've done this a few times before. And we always appreciate the interest that folks have in what it is that we all do at the city. Because sometimes it doesn't seem too glamorous to us. It seems quite busy, but not very glamorous. So it's nice when other people take notice of what we're doing and want to tune in to find out more. I'll try to keep my section brief, but the team, Luann and Catherine know, Luann knows so much more than I do. She's been in the department for quite some time, so I follow her cues on most everything. So you guys will get to hear from Assistant Director Horan as well as Assistant Director Vargas about their areas of focus. But again, thanks for meeting us in this virtual arena, which we've all gotten really accustomed to doing. So yeah, we're City Parks, Department of Parks and Recreation. Those two names are kind of synonymous. I think City Parks has been kind of one of the identifiers for the department for the last, I don't know, maybe since the 70s or something. So people know us by City Parks. People confuse us by both names in some ways, Parks and Rec and City Parks, because they think we perform a lot of the work that we just heard the folks from Department of Public Works talk about. Parks maintenance, no longer a function of our department, and a number of other things. But we'll go through the slideshow a little bit here, and you'll learn about some of what we do. We'll do our best to leave room for questions and answers at the end. And again, if I lose connection for a while, one of the team members will take over and I'll hop back on. Yeah, whenever you're ready, you can advance. Thank you very much. I won't read through all the slides. I think you guys get to capture these after the fact. And you can read them as well as I can on the screen, but I'll just touch upon some kind of important points. As you all know, sadly, but intimately, we've all been through a very trying time since last March, coming up on a year. It's hard to believe we've been kind of under the duress of COVID for so long. I think we've all done what we can to acclimate. Hopefully most of us have been healthy and have been able to see it through. There have been a lot of unfortunate scenarios in and around some of the folks that I know, and I'm sure it's the same for you. So, you know, it's one of those kind of heartfelt things that we always feel compelled to talk about with each other because we as a department are really close. And so in any case, hoping you're all well and remain well. Our department is focused on people and programs. The mayor always says that, and that's kind of what we do. We may have, in a normal year, we may have staff and team members in over 50 city facilities, senior centers, rec centers, swimming pools, spray parks, food program sites. So we are kind of stewards of these city assets while we provide programs and activities for city residents, for kids, for families, for seniors. And we do some of that in parks as well. Our park-specific green space programming isn't necessarily tied to the green space, but we are getting more into kind of green space educational learning. And we still work closely with the park rangers. They're not part of our department, but we still do a lot with them. And we're doing some more kind of collaborative work with folks like folks at the Parks Conservancy and elsewhere. So we activate green space, but primarily we're activating programs in certain city facilities. And most of, if you all are city residents, you probably know where most of these, or where some of these facilities are, and hopefully you've been to a few of them. A couple of highlights here just to speak to COVID. you may or may not know that most of our rec and senior centers are still closed for in-person congregate services. We shut the doors on maybe March 13th of 2020. And the comfort level due to the transmission of the virus we just don't have it yet. Our senior program, which Luann will talk about, it's operated by funding through Allegheny County and through a federal grant. We as a provider for those senior services, we haven't gotten the green light to open the doors, and that's a good thing because the last thing we want to do is create a scenario whereby someone might get the virus through unexpected transmission from somewhere else. But what we have been able to do successfully are just a couple of things that are mentioned here. You'll hear a little bit more. Is we have been able to operate grab and go meals for seniors and for kids and families. And to date, the metric is missing from that bullet point, the third bullet point down there. But we've served approximately 400,000 meals, free meals, to seniors, to kids and families since last March. So we were able to switch gears and kind of launch in different ways some of our food program initiatives, along with a lot of assistance from partner organizations, internal and external, to provide meals for families and for kids and seniors and those folks who really, really needed it in this time of crisis. So to perhaps hit 500,000 meals served. Yeah, it sounds like McDonald's or something, but we might get there by March of this year if our doors remain closed for in-person activities. That feels like a very sizable accomplishment. So hats off to everyone in the department that has worked so hard, kind of on the front lines every week, distributing meals to children and seniors and families. It's really a significant thing. So thanks to my staff and everybody else who's helped us do that. Another thing we were able to do and kind of were forced to do is launch into some virtual programming. You'll hear a little bit more about that, but the final bullet point on this slide speaks a little bit about that. Maybe you're aware we kind of have a tech digital inclusion coordinator, tech coding expert on our staff now, and he's launched some virtual coding camps, and we've done other things via kind of take home maker space camp kit activities that parallel some of what we would normally do in a normal season through our summer camps or after school programs. So we were able to do quite a bit of outreach, even though things were very different for us. Looks like next slide, Leah, please. Just a few metrics here. 13 healthy active living centers. Those are our senior centers. 10 recreation centers. We have, inclusive of the Oliver Bath House in the south side of Pittsburgh, we have 19 swimming pools. We now are up to 8 spray parks, spray pads, spray parks. We have a pretty significant presence in Mellon Park, respective to the Mellon tennis bubble, the big inflated dome there that we're hoping to be able to replace within the next year or two. And we also now operate the Shenley Ice Rink. The City Parks had operated the Shenley Ice Rink facility for some years, and it went to the Department of Public Works for a couple of years, and now it's back home with our department. In a normal year, non-COVID, we could have up to 400 employees, maybe a little bit more, depending on what's going on in a given year, depending on if we have interns and maybe AmeriCorps Keys youth that assist us. But as you can see from some of those 3 bullet points under that employee count, we operate the department with only about 1/5 of those folks being full-time. We have about 1/5 or so being full-time, or excuse me, year-round part-time staff. And then we rely heavily on seasonal hires, people that we recruit during our busiest months, those months in the summer, for swimming pools, for spray parks, for our food program. And we at times will have an excess of perhaps 200 lifeguards that we onboard when we operate all of our outdoor swimming pools. 30 seconds, Leah. Next, please. Quick look at the budget. Our budget has been, like every city department, due to the fiscal constraints imposed by reduction in everything that kind of hits a municipality that might come in by way of taxes and other revenue. We've had a nearly 20% cut to our operating fund. If I lose you, Luann, please, or KB, pick up.
Hi, everyone. It's Luann. I'm the Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. I guess I'll pick up where Ross left off. Let's see, he started telling you about our budget. Not sure exactly where he left off. I was thinking about something else. I think he talked about our general fund budget and where we're at. And we have several trust funds where they're listed. We have the Shenley Park Ring Trust Fund, the Frick Park Trust Fund, RAD Trust Fund, Senior Trust Fund, Mellon Trust Fund, Food Service Trust Fund. I was trying to listen in on Public Works budget, and I'm not sure if they had any mention of the RAD Trust Fund. We got a lot of funding from RAD Trust Fund, and that, as you can see, that is, we get that funding from a 1% sales tax that was added on, and that really helps us with the RAD parks. There are 5 regional parks. They're the largest parks in the city, and that money has helped tremendously to make improvements inside those parks. We redid made improvements and upgrades to the Shenley Rink, the Frick Park, as well as Highland. We put some new exercise equipment in those parks, and it's really, we've been able to do a lot with that money. So that money will continue into next year. We share that funding with Department of Public Works and with ourselves. And a bulk of that money does go to Public Works because they have a lot of maintenance staff that handle, the cleanup, the grass cutting, and all the services in the parks. So if you want, you can switch to my slide now, and we'll start talking about the senior program, if you don't mind, please. The next slide. You have the Riverview Park, you have Highland Park, Shenley Park, Frick Park, and Emerald View Park, which is the newest RAD park. So you can see where they're spread out. We have them marked on the map there where they are in the city. And as I said, that RAD money comes from the additional 1% sales tax in Allegheny County. And like I said, we share that with the Department of Public Works. So this is talking about where the RAD funds go. And so you can see what I was telling you about. We have Public Works, and so their money for RAD takes care of the maintenance in the parks. So they do the grass cutting, the tree care, and the landscaping, the trail maintenance, and the plowing of the roads. And they have capital projects as well. So we get RAD capital funding, which is about, I think we get about $9 million in RAD. Is it 9 million? No, I'm sorry, about $1 million in RAD capital dollars as well. So they have capital projects that they spend the money on for paving, ball courts, and play areas. I believe this year it's going to be used for some landslide remediation this year. The money will go to for the capital funds for RAD. And Parks and Recs, RAD funding will go to the city pools and the RAD parks, of which we have 3, which would be Riverview, Highland, and Shenley. Then we have tennis and volleyball courts, and we have programs run by community enrichment, which is Arts in the Park. And then we have the roving art cart that goes around to various parks where children come and they make different crafts and stuff throughout the summer months. And then I will finish up, and we have public safety also. We share RAD funds with them as well. We have special events where they do cinemas in the park at the various RAD parks where they show, they have concerts. They have summer concerts. We have movies in the parks that are free for the public to come and sit and enjoy during the summer months. They have some community foot races. And then one of our fairly new programs are the park rangers. They're the ambassadors in the park. They promote safety. They are there to answer questions the public might have. They go to schools actually and teach some classes to the children there. They are in the parks just for people who have questions or concerns. They could take it to the park rangers. They have uniforms. They're very well identified as park rangers. I believe there's about 12 of them now that are in the various rad parks. So they've been a wonderful asset to the city. Next slide, please.
Back to what I might have mentioned before about areas that we might have there might be some confusion even internal to city personnel as to what City Parks does and what we don't do and what Department of Public Works does. This is just a list of the areas that we kind of focus on and kind of what we're responsible for in a very condensed way. Leah, next slide, please. Thank you very much. This is some of the things that you heard Acting Director Hornstein and his staff mention, all of the things that they're responsible for. Parks, playground, building maintenance, that's huge. We have a critical dependency on the folks in Public Works. They're the recipients of the capital funds that make all of the renovation projects, anything that hits one of the facilities that we occupy and program out of, we work with them closely as they are the keepers of the funds for capital initiatives. So our relationship with them is very close. Oftentimes it feels like we work for Public Works because there's so much work that's going on. All of it's a really great thing. The mayor and the administration have committed a significant amount of resources to the improvement of facilities and addressing a lot of deferred maintenance. You heard our friends in Public Works talk about that. But this list here is some of the things that people often think that we have responsibility to manage or maintain or oversight over, but we don't. So a quick list of that. Next, please. And here's, I didn't even need, yeah, I should have just stayed out of the way. And Lou can pick back up and talk about her primary area of focus, but just a little context real quick, and then I'll shut up. Luann's been with the department for quite some time. I've been with the city for about 11 years, but I'm only in Parks and Rec for a little over 3. I had been asked to come into this department to help out, and everything I know, everything you hear me say or I could ever say, I probably learned it from Lou. So she's always behind the curtain for all of us. She's a wealth of information. She's passionate about what she does, and now that she's the assistant director of a senior program, you'll see some of that passion and vigor come through. So thanks, Lou, for all you do, and of course you too, Kathy. Okay, that's enough from me.
Thanks, Ross. During this COVID time, you know what? It's kind of, you get in the house, you're stuck in the house a lot. You know, I'm working from home. I find myself getting, like my seniors, and getting a little lonely sometimes. And, you know, when you hear nice words like that, kind words, I find myself getting a little touched lately by things, and it really touches my heart to hear you say that. I appreciate that, Ross. You know, thank you. So let me move on here. From this slide, as Ross said, this is Luann Horan, and you're going to see these are our 13 healthy active living centers, and these are pictures of the centers. And I have them all listed here, and I want you to be able to see what they look like in case you haven't been around to any of the centers. And I wanted you to be familiar with them, you know. And so I'm just going to start right now with my little talk here about them. And I'm going to tell you the city operates the largest senior community center program in the Pittsburgh region. We have a total of 13 senior centers which provide for healthy, active aging through nutrition and socialization, recreation, outreach, and information and referral services, along with promoting senior community involvement through volunteerism. Now, I want to let you know that it's really important that we couldn't do this without our leader at the top, the mayor. And he's been making large investments by way of capital improvements at the health centers. We call them health centers for short. And sometimes I refer to them as senior centers as well. I just go back and forth. And I'm not sure if any of you have had the opportunity lately to visit a senior center prior to the COVID. But if you do, you're going to see a lot of upgrades to our centers. And there are more investments that are needed, and these upgrades will be taking place in the next year to refresh our centers. And I invite you to stop by when we reopen for business and think about becoming members when you're ready to, and enjoy the amenities and the company of the other seniors. You'll see from the pictures the improvements on the outside. And if you look at the Greenfield Center, which Public Works had as well because they had their hands in it in making this happen, it received a facelift to the outside and inside improvements as well. The Greenfield Center in particular is also known as the McGee Center, which is two facilities in one. It also houses a recreation center on the bottom and a senior center on the lower level. But we've also had many improvements made at Beachview, Homewood, Morningside, and the Southside Market House. And they've had new interior spaces and furniture, exercise equipment, computers, and that's just to name a few. So let me tell you a little bit about how they operate. So you'll see that they have focal points on some of them. So the focal points are the larger centers that are attended. And these are the Homewood, Greenfield, Sheridan, and the Market House. And they have attendance, they should have attendance of over 25 persons every day. That's what constitutes them being called a focal point. And the other centers we have are considered pods to the focal points. So this is how we get our funding based on the county budget. Now let me tell you that there are 42 dedicated city parks employees who are a combination of full-time center directors and recreation leader ones and rec leader part-timers who operate the center, as well as 2 program supervisors who oversee the team members. Now, we receive operational funds through 2 main sources, as Ross told you about earlier. One is community development block grants, which is CDBG funds. And this year, we will receive an allocation of $750,000. Excuse me. The second source is through the Allegheny County Area Agency on Aging, which is passed through to us from the state by way of a contract. This is a performance-based budget. This is based on attendance at the centers and attendance at the various programs at our sites. We will receive $754,450 for budget year 2020 and 2021. So this budget runs from July to June. And now all of these funds we receive are deposited into the Senior Trust Fund, which we showed you in the other slide, which is a dedicated trust fund to operate the senior program. All the salaries and expenses are paid out of this trust fund. Now, we were recently, just so you know, we were recently notified by Allegheny County that since most of you were paying close attention to the most famous groundhog this year. Now you know who that is, right? The most famous groundhog goes by the name of, who's that? Gus, right? Gus, he's the second most famous groundhog. We will be able to operate our senior centers due to all of you who've been scratching. So please, let me ask you to continue to keep on scratching. As you may hear on the commercial proceeds from the PA, Pennsylvania, because the Pennsylvania lottery goes towards funding programs that benefit older Americans. And this would be us at the senior centers, as well as many across the county. So we kindly thank you for your generosity and support for the senior programs. Thank you. During normal operations, we open the 13 health centers for residents 60 years and older to enjoy a hot, nutritious meal Monday through Friday. We open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. A person who we call them consumers, we try and use that word, can register the day before by noon for a meal for the next day. There is only a suggested donation of 50 cents that they can put in the donation box if they wish to contribute. This is not a requirement. And then when the consumer comes into one of our centers, we have a co-pilot system, which is a touch screen for a consumer to register for a daily lunch or an activity that allows our staff to collect data. We also have physical sign-in sheets, which a person can utilize as well, in case there's a third party who wants to come in and carry on an activity. Our goal is to encourage our consumers to be healthy and active through a variety of programs we offer to centers, like visitation from a nursing student who attends the local universities to administer blood pressure screening and exercise programs. We had yoga and walking groups, as well as bocce and horseshoes. We have City Park Senior Games, where seniors can partake in a number of events and enjoy some friendly competition, such as rowing, and believe it or not, archery. Archery is one of the #1 things that the seniors really enjoy doing. And there are also activities through some of our partnerships with community colleges, CCAC, to stimulate the mind, such as computer classes, book clubs. We have offer cooking classes, art activities, paintings, and ceramics. A couple of our centers have killins. There's some new killins that have been installed at the Market House when it was redone, and Homewood has killins. They're getting a new art room there with the killins, and they really enjoy doing that. We also have our staff are also able to assist seniors with meeting financial needs through the information and referral program, helping them identify and apply for programs meant to assist with affordable housing, prescription drugs, transportation assistance, and the farmers markets voucher program, offering $20 vouchers that can be used at the farmers markets across the city in the summer. Now, just real short, let me tell you what happened when Ross was telling you about we closed on March 16th for COVID. Everything was shut down. By Friday, March 20th, we served our first grab-and-go meals, which is provided by the Allegheny County Area Agency on Aging through their vendors, Nutrition Inc. and METS, to our seniors. We opened senior centers at that time. We did this on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Our staff at City Park stepped right in to distribute the meals. No questions asked. They were right there for us. The people received a frozen prepared meal for every day of the week, along with a piece of fruit, milk, bread. And now, to date, we've opened all our centers with, I think, one exception, where we serve meals to everyone that comes and signs up. Let me talk about, we have some outstanding partners that have helped us provide services. The Pittsburgh Police, through Macedonia Church, have provided produce 3 times a week with fresh fruit and vegetables, along with egg and cheese and milk. We have monthly food boxes from the community food bank that are delivered to the people who have signed up for them. We've had partners with Global Links. They've provided us 2,500 masks for our seniors when a mask could not be found. They provide personal hygiene. We put these masks in the back and the grab-and-go bags. We have them on the tables. It's just been amazing. And there were many volunteers to deliver meals for people. We had Delta Sigma Phi provide 75 freshly prepared hot meals with food brought by them, bought by them, prepared by them, and cooked at the casino. And they brought them every Thursday, hot meals, to the Sheridan Senior Center, brought them around to the back door. Immediately came out of their trunks, walked to the front door, and there was a line of 80 people, seniors, standing at the door, and we handed them out. Within 15 minutes, they were gone. They were just amazing. We couldn't thank these men enough for their support. It was absolutely wonderful. And then we had Eden Park and Parkhurst with Chef Claudie provide and prepare 250 one evening hot meals to the seniors. And we also want to thank Councilwoman Teresa Kell Smith for her donation. She prepared boxes and had a truckload of boxes that she organized and delivered to the high rises throughout the community, to different high rises where she lives, and they were left at all the apartments in front of their doors. Now, as Ross said, today we distributed approximately 100,000 grab and go meals. We're still growing and will continue to do so. There are no words to express the dedication of our staff at City Parks for the loving way they've helped their fellow citizens. At their own risk, they believe in helping others. We did our very best to keep everyone safe. There's been an outpouring of volunteers as well to deliver the meals to persons who have been shut in at the high rise. They're special angels who have protected others and cared for their well-being to make sure they had a meal to eat. I recall one woman who came to Lawrenceville, a young girl. She would come every day to pick up 20 meals to take to Morningside. She had a list of names. She would check them off, and she would make sure she had what she needed. She would carry a heavy bag out to her car of frozen meals. She would stop by a number of times each week to pick up these meals to take to the seniors over at Morningside to make sure they had a meal over to the high rise. And there were others as well. I can tell you, it's good to see young people lending a hand to help the seniors. Our staff are also making wellness calls to check in on the consumers as well to see how they're doing. Some people don't have anyone to take care of them and welcome the call. Don't make a call every day. It's important that we stay connected to our seniors. We reach out to see if there's anything we can do to them, help them, contact them to some agency if they need help. Early on, we were able to have meals delivered to some of their homes while working with Allegheny County. We weren't able to reach them with our grab and go meals. It's important to make sure that we feed them and continue to do so. I find it a good time for each of us to pay it forward and do something nice for someone. If you don't know what they have been going, you don't know what they've been going through this difficult time. Most of them are really lonely. Many have been shut in their residence for months with no contact. We just need someone to listen to them. What I've learned out of such a terrible pandemic is COVID-19. I've found people to be so kind to each other. And I say love is still the answer. And thank you for listening to me right now. And I'll move on. Catherine, have a say. I've taken up too much time. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lou. Very nice. Yeah, there's a lot of information there, and this year has lent itself to a lot of other kind of considerations. Hats off to you and the whole of the senior program team for being able to do what you have done and do every day for seniors in our community. Next up is our Assistant Director of Community Recreation, Youth and Families, Assistant Director Catherine Vargas. Thanks, Katie.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. This is a late night for you all. If I look distracted at any moment, it's because I have a very needy puppy. All of a sudden, you would think she's never gotten attention, but this is really blowing her mind, I think, a little bit since I've been sitting over here. But this is great. It's really awesome to see a group of residents come together to hear about this work. So I've actually been working with the City Parks Department for a little bit over a year. So I'm newer to the team. But from the moment I started working with the team, I could see how dedicated Ross and Lou have been, and it's been great to work with them. And I get to work primarily with our community rec team. So when I talk about community recreation, it's a lot of different things. So I'm going to go through sort of what that encompasses, but I think the crux of it really is this idea that, you know, the city has a responsibility to make sure that folks have access to health, wellness, you know, resources right in the community as much as possible. You know, we have some really wonderful recreation centers that really serve as these kind of community hubs. And then we also work with a number of partners who help to make that possible as well. So, you know, it's really a great work. And I, you know, before being in the city, I worked a lot in community youth serving spaces primarily. And so what's been really cool for me to see as I've been working with the City Parks team is just how much the city invests in similar work to work with partners, and then also to make sure that young people and all community residents have access to really important types of amenities that really raise the quality of life for Pittsburgh residents. So you'll see here, you can see our 10 kind of core recreation centers. These are 10 centers that we have staff in. You know, in a normal non-COVID year, these centers would be doing all sorts of things. Leah, you can skip to the next slide. We have as our current membership of folks who have City Parks rec cards. They come into our buildings, over 55,000 folks in the Pittsburgh region who are part of our network. You know, they could be older adults coming in to do weightlifting. They could be using the fitness equipment. They could be there for an organized sport. They could be a family or a young person who's there to utilize our after school summer programming, that sort of thing. So we have tons of different people that we're engaging with across these 10 centers that are there for various reasons. The rec centers really promote all of those different types of activities. And I think it's also important to mention that, you know, our staff who are part of rec, while I'm newer to the team, we have a lot of staff who've been with the department for a really long time, and they've established relationships with the communities that they work in. And I remember there's a picture here, it's at a basketball game in the corner here. You can see, you can't really see him, but Hakeem is our Phillips Rec Center director, and he's in the middle talking. And I was at this event. It was like the first event I got to go to as part of the team at our Phillips Rec Centers in Carrick. And I happened to sit next to a young man, and I didn't know it yet because I was so new, who was starting with our department the next week. And he proceeded to tell me that the reason why he was getting a job with City Parks to work with us is because he had been going to the rec center his whole life. And Mr. Milan, who's not in this picture, but also there, taught him how to play basketball. Like, that's the kind of community that these rec centers are really trying to create. And I think that that's what makes them really special. So that's part of the narrative too. It's not just 55,000 people in the city who connect in their own way, but we hope that it's also our staff that have that community connection back to the community. And there's a lot of folks who've been around for a while. You can go to the next slide. So now I'm going to talk a little bit, that was a little bit to talk about the physical spaces that we operate, but we have a whole host of programs that are, you know, our rec centers tend to be like the center of, you know, a lot of these programs happen because we have rec centers to be able to deliver them in. One of those is the food program. In a normal year, the city operates one of the largest summer food programs, the largest summer food program for the city. And the way that we do this is not only through our 10 recreation centers where we are focused, but we'll also activate food programs out at spray parks, out near pools, out in places where we know young people are going to be in the summertime and going to need access to food. We also work with a whole ton of partners to make sure that they have access to food for their kids. So one of the services that I think sometimes goes overlooked by our department, but is super important and done by like a team of 2 people, is the sponsorship of food programs across the city. All of, you know, what might happen sometimes is an organization or a local church or a local youth program might want to run a food program. They might already have kids that they're working with throughout the summer, but they might not have the capacity to do all the paperwork involved. You know, these programs are federally funded, state run, state contracted programs. There's a lot of really intense reporting and paperwork and you know, all that needs to happen in the background. Our team will do that for folks so that that food can get out to families. We partner with Pittsburgh Public Schools to as our food vendor because they have the capacity to do such large number meals that we require for the summer. But it's really, it's a great service. I think that we provide that sometimes isn't as noticed. And we do it in after school as well. The after school program, same way. We work with a number of partners. We do it out of our rec centers. It's a little bit smaller scale because we're not out at pools and spray parks and things like that. But it's still just as important, the idea that kids have access to these meals. And I also want to mention that during COVID, that's looked really different. But I think that it's just shown how this longstanding partnership that's been in place for 10 years was able to just get started right away. Similar to what Lou described, we all, found out we were going to have to go home. I'm sure parents were finding out that kids were going to be home within a week. We were able to have emergency food, set up in rec centers because we had this infrastructure set and because we had a good partnership with PPS to help deliver that infrastructure. I also want to mention we work with community partners. I know I mentioned Pittsburgh Public, but there's a lot of other community partners that we work with. I think one thing that's super important is this idea of trying to mitigate food waste. So we work with a number of partners that we'll communicate with in the summertime to make sure that food is getting utilized at the end of the day. One of the things that is tricky is that when you're opening open food sites, it might rain that day. Well, you had to order your food 2 days in advance. There's all these real tricky rules with food programs, and that that partnership helps make sure that we're mitigating that. And I did also real quickly just want to mention that someone mentioned composting, and I want to just give an example of where the city is working towards putting the drop in the bucket of that bigger issue of composting. But we have a grant in to potentially work with the city planning department. It's their grant. But the idea is that we would pilot composting practices at 3 of our food programs over the summer, because we know that that is a wonderful place, not only to educate young people on composting, but to think about how does this large scale system think about how it is composting as a part of our environmental footprint in running a program like this. I think that that's something just to be aware of. Leah, you can go to the next slide. And I'm sorry I'm talking fast, but I realize the time is short. And so I did want to mention that during COVID, all of this had to look really different. Our food programs went from meals that kids would eat together in the setting in which they're served to grab and go sites. That's a state function that's made that decision, and it's still in place as a grab and go, and that will happen until we start to see those regulations change. But that also has become really interesting because we've noticed that we have a pretty dedicated group of families that come to grab and go centers to get meals, because this is the place that is in the community that they can get those meals from. Now, I want to say we've been intentional working with Pittsburgh Public to think through where our location should be, because Pittsburgh Public is also running a number of locations and trying to look at that mapping of, okay, where is their food access, to kind of make sure that we're helping to fill that space. So we do have families that come regularly. And one of the things that we started to notice is that, families were coming for food, and it was a great opportunity to also come for other resources. So we have a whole bunch of partners who have, made sure that we could bring other resources to those spaces, and be able to connect kids and families to those resources. Another thing is that we've had, organizations reach out to support families in different types of nutrition. So while, our food program really focuses on, school lunches, school after school meals, snack, that kind of thing, we've worked with Parkhurst, who's been providing family dinners every Friday to every family that comes to get meals, at our recreation centers. The family dinners are meant to be not just, hey, this is another way we could support nutrition on a Friday, for the weekend, the meal, but it's also, a different kind of support for a family. Families are under a ton of stress right now, and not having to, think about that meal on a Friday is also a big support. And it's become something that's been really lovely. And we've done some different creative things to try to build community around those family meals. We've done a couple of dinner programs where we've interviewed Cam Hayward and invited people who got meals together to be part of it, to try to, build a connection that maybe isn't happening in the traditional sense. Leah, you can go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about our like educational outreach, our enrichment programming that we try to provide across our centers. Because it's one thing to say that we have recreation centers that have access to after school, summer programs, different things. But one of the things we're also looking at is how is that time spent in our centers, and what is it that a young person is getting from that experience. So one big push that by our department, and I think an investment the city has made, is how can we start to think about transitioning and transforming recreation centers into places that have access to critical technology and skills that young people need for the future. A lot of our buildings are older. I think you kind of heard from DPW some of the challenges around large scale and long-term planning for the development of like a space that's historically always been there. So as we've been looking at our technology in those spaces, we've noticed that a lot of it is two things. We need to have the internal capacity to have a plan. What does high quality tech education look like? We have a digital inclusion coordinator who is a trained educator, 8th grade. He's taught 8th grade for a number of years, lives in the city, has been doing virtual coding camps in this time of COVID that we haven't been able to be in person, already had started doing in-person programming, and is kind of creating that plan in partnerships with other organizations that can bring resources in. And on the other side, we're trying to make sure that we are being intentional about how we work with DPW and our Information Technology Center to make sure that we can start to get the capacity to make these spaces into tech centers. So it's really interesting because I think that, there's been like about 2 years of really hard work that has happened, and we are right on like the edge of a couple of centers that have investments that are supposed to occur like any month now. And that would be our Ammon Rec Center and Paulson Rec Center in Jefferson. So, we're really excited about that because we're finally seeing, where this could go for the city. But the whole idea is that we know that young people are going to need access to this. I think COVID taught us that kids and families need access to technology and internet. And, our centers can be that, and we're working towards that goal. Next slide. And so, historically, we've always had a community enrichments program part of the department. And I know Lou talked about it already, but this involves, access to enriching arts, play, activity for all ages. But also, there's some intention in there of those things being tied to things like literacy. We work with the Carnegie Library super closely on any book that we are talking about, or we even did a pre-K program during COVID where we had pre-K kits that were all focused on a different letter of the alphabet. And the Carnegie Library provided all of the age appropriate, reading book lists for families that were available in the library to check out. So that kind of partnership, we're always really intentional of taking what it is we're doing in community enrichment and making sure it has some relevance to, helping young people, just keep up with learning. You can go to your local park and hopefully the roving art cart might be there, and it's free and it's accessible to anybody who's there. But then we also work with this team to develop the enrichment time in our city camps and in our Kids Smart After School Club, and with community events that are either out in different parks or even at our rec center. So they have they're kind of in with a lot of different parts of our department. Next slide, please. And I want to talk a little bit about what they did during COVID. They did a ton to get activity kits out to families. And, it was unfortunate that we weren't able to do the traditional kind of engagement that we would do in the summertime. We usually have about 315 kids who would be part of our camps. But we were able to figure out how to take the enrichment piece of camp and package it in a way that we could get it out to families on a weekly basis, summer and after school, and make sure that, the activities were engaging, they were tied to something, they're age appropriate. We did this for elementary and for pre-K kids. And it was a really great practice for us to do. And we started to have families actually send in photos of their kids working on the different projects and really getting involved. And it was really great to be able to provide that, even though we couldn't provide our traditional programming. Next slide. And then I'm just going to talk real briefly about a couple of our recreation activities that we do that are more traditional recreation. I mean, a big one is our city sports programs. City Sports offers, you can see here, a number of different sports. It's, seasonal, like it would be in like a regular season of school sports, but it's for any young person. It's rec league. So, we often, I'll use baseball as an example. It's our biggest of the city sports programs, but, communities, can have teams join. Our team will take care of organizing the tournaments and the schedules and all of that background stuff that happens so that these teams can have this great rec experience. We were not able to do it last summer because COVID hit like right as the baseball season would have taken off. But we also do that for basketball. We do it for futsal. Basketball is a good example. Every single one of our rec centers will have a basketball team, a youth basketball team. And so community members will sign their kids up. We'll take care of the, there's no registration for those kids. They're part of that team. And then they get to participate. And we do try to make everything that we do, there's a fee for baseball, or it's a pretty big operation, but we do have scholarships and other things that we try to make sure that these sports are accessible to kids that are interested in playing. And so these are the sports that we offer now. We also know that there's trends and different things that are possible in the future. Next slide. And I know aquatics was talked about. I know you guys know we have 18 swimming pools. I don't have the exact stat, but we have like the most swimming pools. Pittsburgh has a lot of pools for a city of its size. I want to say that because it's really impressive. But pools are important to the city. Water access is important. And I think that's what's important about spray parks. If you look at where spray parks are located, it's very intentional to make sure that there's a place for kids to have water play, to be able to cool down, whatever, in places where there might not be a pool. I mean, I personally find that really important because I do think that access to that kind of play is really important for young people, and especially in a hot summer. And so this last summer, even though we weren't able to open our swimming pools, we had all of our spray parks open, and we also had them staffed so that we could make sure that, if there was something happening, if someone wasn't keeping social distance, we had extra masks on hand, that kind of stuff, to try to make that experience, as much as it could be in a year that, again, wasn't normal on any level for what we would have operated in a summer. Next slide. One cool thing about aquatics I also want to mention is that we have the indoor swimming pool that is currently going under a historic renovation. It's in a historic building on the south side. That renovation will start in a couple of years. That process has started now. We have a design team in place, and it's really interesting to kind of understand the history of what, it's called the Oliver Bathhouse, but now with this renovation, it's going to keep its historic nature, but then hopefully be a place where more and more people will be able to utilize and start to utilize because of that renovation. So aquatics does more than just operate pools. We have swimming teams. We have a swim team at each pool. So each community pool has a swim team. Swim is free for kids under 15. Pool tags are, the way that kids get access. You also get access to the bathhouse. There's events that happen at the pools, and the pools are another place where we have a lot of staff who've been with us for a long time. The lifeguard up at Ammon Pool is very well known by the community because he's been doing it for like 16 years. It's again, that place where community comes together, and where I think our team does a great job of trying to help foster that by their long-term relationships with folks in the neighborhood. Next slide. Tennis, I know it was talked about, and I'm almost done. The Mellon tennis bubble is an unbelievably highly used space, which I came to learn recently. It's one of the facilities that we've been able to open with COVID regulations in place, with masks and temperatures and questions that people have to ask. Part of the reason why this space is a little easier to do that, we could limit the capacity easier, and we also have, it's pre-registered for a lot of folks who use the space. They'll book time in the bubble, but we also do a ton, of clinics and courses, classes, and we have tennis pros that work with folks. Those are not operational right now, but in a normal year, those would be things that would happen across the city, not just in the bubble, but even in the summertime out. We have a robust youth program out at Frick tennis courts. And there's a tennis associations that we've worked with and supported in the past and continue to partner with on different things. There's tournaments that happen. And I know nothing about pickleball except that people in Pittsburgh are starting to love pickleball. So we actually have a growing number of pickleball courts, and we've had people even suggest, hey, can we get a pickleball association started? So, we think about recreation, it really is the gamut of all sorts of different activities that, folks really want to have access to nearby, near their homes. And it really does help facilitate that. Next one. I think this is my last slide, everyone. Yes. The ice rink, which also is open currently under COVID regulations. That's been a nice learning opportunity for us. We just got the ice rink back in our department, so it's brand new to us again. And so interesting to have that operation look so different this year based on the fact that COVID has existed in its season, but it's a seasonal operation that we have. It involves open skate time. It's very affordable. If you think about how much other ice skating rinks, you're gonna, I think it's like $5 a person for the skate session, up $3 for skates. And we do a number of events in a normal year where there's opportunities for folks to come out and check out skating classes, things like that. You'll see these mascots are here. That's a big event every year, is the mascot skate, and they actually can skate better than me, and they're in outfits. So there's that. But I've enjoyed getting to know the Shenley Ice Rink, and again, this year's looked a little different, but it is open. It's a great way to be out and recreate. We are making folks wear masks, of course, take temperatures, all of that stuff before they get out on the ice. And yeah, so with that, I'll kick it back over to Ross to kind of close things out. But I just want to make one last mention that, when I think about what we're trying to do with the programming side of community recreation, it's really about, how are we creating access points to these kinds of opportunities, whether it's learning, engagement, it's sports, it's health, it's wellness, it's fitness, it's, play. All of these things are really important to kids, and they're especially important now with COVID and some of the regular social supports not being available. So it's something where we really need to continue to be creative and thinking about how that system is strengthened, in the future. So go ahead, Ross.
Awesome, Catherine. Lou, thank you so much. We want to leave a little time for Q&A. I know we're really close to 8:30. I think that's the end of the typical scenario for the meetings. Just a quick shout out to Sue Lucas in our department, who manages kind of our communications for us. Previous slide mentioned all the social that we have in place. All of it is really due to the efforts of her, and in conjunction with some of the kind folks in the city's IT department. So just a shout out to Sue, who really put the presentation together for us. The next slide, I think, Leah, was just a thanks to some of the community partners. This is not an exhaustive list. It doesn't include everybody that interfaces with us and supports us in some way, shape, or form. But these are some of the partners that we've gotten to work with and know maybe a little bit better through this last year. We have a really good relationship with all of them, and we want to do more with them and with others who do not appear on this list. And lastly, last slide, I think, yeah. Just a thanks to, well, first, personally, a thanks to my team and all of the departments in the city, the mayor's office, the mayor himself, the chief of staff, and everyone else internally, because we couldn't do this alone. I mean, our dependencies on IT, well, maybe I shouldn't use tonight as an example since I couldn't even control my own laptop, but there's a lot of people that support us in every way, shape, and form, from fiscal arenas to procurement areas to IT. And so we're thankful to all of them, but we're thankful to you all and all the city residents who have supported the department for decades. We think we're in a position to do more. We're trying to do more. I think we have some really skilled and motivated people. We've had, as Catherine and Lou have mentioned, we've had some really long-time employees that are just dedicated to the mission. So we're getting it done by having those folks out there do what they do well. And we, the three of us, serve as kind of in a support role for those folks. So hats off to you. Thanks for listening in, Lee. I hope there's enough time for a couple questions. And thanks for taking control of the slideshow when I failed at that miserably.
No problem. Thank you all for your presentation. Let's do some clap reactions because that was beautiful. I think I might have teared up once or twice. You all do really amazing work for the city. And yeah, I think we can take some questions if that's okay with your team. And if people need to hop off, they can. But it looks like we do have a few.
Sure.
So Allie?
Yes, great presentation, and I've appreciated how much is available to residents and especially to children during the pandemic and seniors. Nice to see it comprehensively. I'm curious, for as many limits as there are from the pandemic, is there the potential for more use of the healthy active living centers and also the rec centers for either after school programming like the learning hubs that PPS has been trying to do, and maybe even for vaccine distribution if we can imagine more sites doing that. And if you have anything to say about the healthy active living centers, I'm curious about the site on McClure in Brighton Heights because I noticed the windows are boarded up and I didn't know if that was for some window restoration or what's up.
I'll answer, Alan. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. And for those of you that have given a few shout outs via the chat, we appreciate that. Yeah, so I just had a conversation with some of the officials in the Public Safety Bureau about the potential use of some of the rec or senior centers for community vaccination sites. I don't think that there's a mechanism in place yet to facilitate that. And as we all know, there doesn't seem to be quite enough of the actual vaccine that's yet made available. Luann was working on some communications that came to us via Allegheny County just yesterday to kind of pass out to seniors and kind of instill a hope of patience in them as we are all kind of waiting to learn more. But yes, we are hopeful that we can activate some city facilities to aid in the administration of the vaccinations. Just don't have any information about that. Specific to your question about learning hubs, and please don't tell anybody, this is our secret, but the three of us have been talking a lot about trying to formalize a real educational team, a group, because we have so many educators within our grasp. In our department, we have folks, the community enrichment team and others. We're working closely with the rangers. They have instructional programs. So if we were able to formalize something like that, and this gets back to some of what Catherine was talking about in providing these kind of these locations where youth and family can come to facilitate additional learning, tech learning, anything that's adjacent to that, to help them, to help guide them through their career choices, their school choices. We want to be able to do that. Catherine knows a little bit more about how the learning hubs work, those that serve as learning hubs and funding that may be available to them. But I think the city, we're in a good position to think about how we can structure our own programs to resemble that, to be those things for city residents. We have no timetable as of yet as to when the centers might reopen. We're hopeful that everybody starts to feel comfortable enough as the numbers start to trend down. I feel as though if the public schools were to make an announcement, I think there's a vote tonight. I don't know what happened one way or the other with the board for PPS as to when in-person hybrid might commence. We want to kind of be ahead of that, and we want to open up our doors to facilitate some youth engagement as we would normally have right now. Normally we'd have our after-school program commencing in almost all of our rec centers. So we want to get the team has been dying to kind of get back out there and provide direct support to families and kids and seniors, and hopefully we can do that. Lou, if you want to add anything, please do. But yes, there is For Brighton Heights, there is a significant capital grant that the city has received for a full-scale renovation of that facility. It's going to take years. Our department was able to successfully secure 3 cycles of grants through the Pennsylvania Department of Aging, with the help of the grants team and the Office of Management and Budget and the Public Works Department. So we've been able to get these little pockets of money to do some renovation in a number of our centers, 6 or 8 of them. The Brighton Heights work will be full-on major renovation work, and it'll be more than just windows, but you're starting to see phase 1 of it. There's going to be a lot of planning that goes into that facility and what it will look like over the next year. The councilman's been very supportive of it. So, maybe in a few years, you're going to see something pretty exciting take shape there, but it's going to take a little while.
Thank you. Let's move on to Jacob.
This is a 2-part question. I think it might be for Catherine. I was just curious, I pulled up the map of the 10 rec centers, and I was curious what the last one built was, how recent it is. And you can basically draw a line straight at the point, and there aren't any rec centers west of the point. I live in Crafton Heights, so I happen to be in that area, and I was just curious, how do children in my neighborhoods, how do they get to rec centers? Do they get to rec centers?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the West End having kind of a dearth of programming, not just youth stuff, but a lot of things. One thing that we have done is we operate one of our food programs normally at the Sheridan Senior Center. They offer after-school meals and do some little kind of activities there in the after-school time, because senior centers will often kind of their busy time is that earlier hours, and so we've been able to kind of create almost like a satellite offering to families and kids around nutrition, and sometimes we're able to get some activity there. It's not a full solution for sure, but it's one way that we've tried to be in that space. The other is that we partner with Pittsburgh Public to do after school at Langley, which serves that community as well. And so while it's not our program specifically, it is in partnership with PPS. It's been a 5-year relationship. Of course, with COVID and the school not being open, we were unable to do that this year. Again, not a full solution. And it's definitely something that's noted about the West End. There's a great organization that there's like emerging organizations that have been working in the West End. One, why am I blanking? They work with us at Langley, and I'm totally not thinking.
Jasmine Nyree, the Jasmine Nyree Center?
No,
that new one? No?
No, it's been there with Keisha. Anyone know Keisha Gomez? She runs it. I'm forgetting the name of the organization, but they do youth programming in the West End, and they're newer. They're not the brand new one. I know exactly what you're talking about, Bill. It's they've been there for a couple of years and really growing their footprint, finding a place to run program. There's been a couple of churches that have run programs that partners have been able to utilize, but I will say the West End is tricky. So we would want to, and a lot of the buildings have historically been where they are. So looking at that map, those have been there. I don't know if maybe Lou might actually know. She's been with the department the longest. What's the most recently built of the rec centers?
My guess is going to be McGee. That'd be my guess.
Okay.
That'd be my guess, maybe. I'm not sure.
And Jacob, that was you that asked that question. Is that correct? One thing that the city is committed to, the mayor just this year, capital monies. There is a senior center, as Lou mentioned, in the West End Senior Center. Well, we had been leasing that. The city has been leasing that forever. We are now, I think the agreement is drafted. We are purchasing that facility from the owner. He's a really nice guy, lives in Michigan. So the city will acquire that property, that parcel, and having had some conversations with Council President K.L. Smith over the years, we're hoping that we can activate that space, not just for seniors, but for youth programs as well. So the city being able to acquire that facility, it opens up a couple avenues for us to explore different programming. So the intent would be, and I think the three of us would push for this, is that we could do something that is kind of intergenerational there, similar to how Greenfield McGee operates, where you have senior program and youth programming in the same facility. I think that would be something that I'd like to see happen at the West End. So hopefully within the next few months, the city will have acquired that property, and it'll be one of its assets.
Thank you. Looks like we just have 2 more questions, if that's okay with you all. Okay. Karen?
Hi. My question, I think, is for Catherine. It was really interesting and helpful to hear about the food programs. And I have heard some conversation around kind of institutional purchasing and how sourcing could possibly change someday in the future in institutions, coming from PPS and other kind of institutions within Pittsburgh, thinking about the regional food system and supporting regional agriculture. Are you part of those conversations? Are you thinking about that in your food programs?
So I'm not part of those conversations in this particular role, but I definitely know what you're speaking to. You know, I think one thing that's interesting about our food program, so we do partner with Pittsburgh Public. There are a number of organizations that have the capacity to do high volume food, and then the amount of money that they get per meal is like dramatically, it's not great, and it's not great for high quality. So the other, and I don't know, I'm going a little off the cuff. This is my own personal opinion. The other vendor, it's called Nutrition Inc. It's like across the state, and that food quality is very, it's not great, but they can often be the lowest bidder. So what's interesting here is it's a state program. There's been a lot of conversation around food folks, particularly for like youth program meals, around like, yeah, this meets a baseline qualification for nutrition, but when you really look at it, it's not necessarily like of the highest quality. So what would it take to be high quality? Well, of course, having fresher options. And I think that there's been some programs that have come locally. I think one Community Kitchen Pittsburgh is like a local example where they provide food to a lot of youth food programs, but they also are a little bit smaller scale. So they also get to you know, be a little bit more selective and interesting in how they scale what they can deliver to food programs. I don't know if that helps answer it, but the one group that would be great to talk to is the food bank, because they actually started to work with the state around trying to break down competitive bids for food programs like this into smaller regions, so that you wouldn't only have 1 or 2 options, that you could have an option of a much smaller provider who could maybe provide a very different quality food, and then therefore are likely using fresher, more local sources. But as a system, it needs a lot of improvement. I just happen to know that because I care about that issue a lot. But I think that they would be a great person. And I know the city works with the Food Policy Council. Our food programs supervisor sits on that as a participant, and so does the planning department, their sustainability folks. And if you're not part of that, that would be a great place to have this conversation. Okay, yeah, so.
Yes, Karen, you are part of are you on the Food Policy Council? Is that? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, that makes sense. Cool, thank you, Catherine, for that. And our last question is from Bill.
I think my question's probably for Catherine also. I saw on PBS, WQED was doing this really cool programming, like where Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch are like all over the world. They're doing these programs to, I can't remember the exact issue they're working on with youth, but you know, I was looking at all your partners. In the last slide, you had WQED as a partner. I'm just curious, like with such a great local asset, how connected are they to what you do?
Yeah, so WQED was one of our summer resources partners. They donated 1,000, they did 2 things. They donated 1,000 backpacks that had digital resources. The theme around this was during Fred Rogers Day, so they had like Daniel Tiger stuff in there. That was like the theme for that. Yeah. But then they also worked with our special events team at the city to do a screening of the Fred Rogers movie that had recently come out. And they worked with them on that. They were also interested in doing, and I know this is a conversation that the special events team might have been part of, and even Tiffany Semino, who's in the mayor's office, that does a lot of work with early childhood stuff, because a lot of their resources, their prime programming is in that range. But around having, like, you know, a special debut of a Daniel Tiger episode and getting the information out to families, you know, through our sites, and then maybe having families log in and participate. That was something like in the summertime that they were looking at. So we do know them. They're definitely friends of ours. You know, I think, you know, potentially maybe when we get our rec centers, the tech capabilities, we can do more with them. A lot of their resources are technology based. You know, they have like flash drives and websites that you can go to and get a whole host of things for parents. So we've tried to help get the word out about that, but we don't, you know, so we know them. We would definitely do more with them. They probably do a whole lot of things with PPS around digital learning, though, because that's really kind of their sweet spot.
But, you know, I just wanted to mention too that like when you were going over the pottery programs, things like that, I agree with Jacob. I lived in Crafton Heights my whole life. We had great city parks programming at Dunbar at one time. Dunbar Field, it's almost like abandoned now. There was a house there, you know, and someone lived in the park that worked for the city. You know, I'm talking about in the 70s, but the city parks programs were phenomenal. And my son and I have been trying to find a pottery class, and we can't even find them. And so some of the programs you mentioned, I think would be so appealing to, you know, parents to do with their kids, and expand the outreach more than just seniors if they're open to that.
Good. Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah, Bill, just real quick, we're also, you know, we kind of have, you know, sometimes the word partnership sounds kind of formal, but we do connect with the folks at the Center for the Arts as well. They have obviously had to alter their programs, their in-person programs, but we have recently had conversations with them about engaging not just seniors for ceramics and like programs, but our kids as well. Because we also realize that there's kind of there's this apparent void of programming that might occur outside of a school setting that is arts based. So we have people on our staff that can help facilitate some of that. So we're just starting to have those conversations. And I think we're all hopeful that once this pandemic is largely behind us and we can kind of start to resume some in a realm of normalcy, whatever that might be, that we can pick up where we left off on some of these conversations. And that's one conversation we're actively having. So that's of keen interest to us, is to get our kids and other kids exposed to some of these programs that we don't facilitate yet in-house. And if we can pull them in-house, all the better.
I'll tell you, my son is 16. I'm divorced, and he goes to West Allegheny. He gets 1 hour of career exploration in his history class, and that's it.
Wow.
So like we went to Bidwell, so I picked him up every day one summer and took him to Bidwell, but they wouldn't let me do it. I was working anyways, but you know, those are the kinds of things I think that would make people want to stay in the city, living in the city. Like I'm real adamant to my ex that I'm not leaving the city. There's always, you know, the films in the park, that kind of stuff is so cool. I think you might not even realize how much residents appreciate that.
Oh, that's great to hear.
You know, it really is. It's been excellent seeing the programming grow like that.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Bill. And thank you to Ross, Catherine, and Luann for that presentation. I think we all learned a lot and really appreciate the work that you do for the city. Yeah, we're doing some claps.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we'll close out for the evening. As usual, I'll post all of, you know, some of the links that we mentioned in the PowerPoint from today. And feel free to reach out to me if you want to, you know, further connect with any of our presenters from tonight.